you.
This is AM Agenda. Thanks for your company. With me now, Labor MP Ed Husic and Liberal MP Josh Frydenberg. Gentlemen,
good morning.
Good to see you for the first time this year.
Josh Frydenberg, is it?
That's it.
Good to see you.
Fellas, I want to start on... well, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. First of all, Craig Thompson. Craig Thompson in the court today. Another distraction for the government, unhelpful. The timing last week of the arrest was disastrous, wasn't it, off the back of the Prime Minister announcing the election date and that all unfolding, and it continues to unfold today in Melbourne.
Well, it's the course of justice. It takes its, just basically moves in the way it has to, and you have to deal with it. At this point, Craig has always said that he'll basically, appear, that he'll respond to the charges, and he's said that he's innocent, so he's got to go and have his day in court.
That's fair enough, isn't it?
Look, he will have his day in court, and 149 serious charges. Surely they're going to be dealt with. But the point here is that the Prime Minister still relies on Craig Thompson's tainted vote, but for Craig Thompson, this government would fall, and that would make a lot of Australian people pretty happy.
There's been a story covered out of the ICAC inquiry, the fact that a couple of ministers stayed at a ski chalet for a few nights at Eddie Obeid's expense. Scott Morrison's made some comments this morning. I just want to play that for our viewers and then come back to you guys.
I was in the New South Wales Parliament, and even back in the 90s, people talked of sort of Eddie Obeid, Joe Tripodi in hushed muffles, in a sense. And it just seems that the New South Wales political parties, whether it be the Liberal Party or the Labor Party, they have this capacity through the sort of Sydney factions, in a sense, to keep destroying themselves.
Eddie Obeid's been known for a long time, a really long time, and people who want to claim ignorance about Eddie Obeid from 2006 or 2003 when they served in their cabinets, I think is trying to have one over the Australian people, and certainly the people of New South Wales.
Scott Morrison, with his response before him, Tony Windsor, of course, the independent MP, Ed Husic. Is it just uncomfortable to be mentioned in these circles? A couple of nights in a chalet doesn't seem like a great deal.
Yeah, and I thought that both Steve Conroy and Tony Burke were upfront in their responses, that they in the inquiries that were made in relation to this issue. So I don't see what further can be done. They both said that they'd use those premises, that Mr Obeid wasn't there at the time. So
Scott Morrison says that he's been known. He's been around the place for a long time, and that people, I suppose he's implying there that people should have been a bit more wary about accepting generosity from him.
Well, as the what's the saying, the Monday morning quarterbacks, everyone's wise. Scott Morrison's become apparently the person who knew all this and said nothing all along. So good luck to him.
Josh, your thoughts on all of this?
Look, the Eddie Obeid scandal is definitely engulfing Labor, and I can just see him now travelling down the Hume all the way to Canberra, because I think, it does raise a number of questions for senior Labor ministers, and I'm sure we'll hear about that more in the coming days. But Scott Morrison's absolutely right. Eddie Obeid's been part of Labor's furniture in New South Wales, and I'm sure there are a lot of relationships there that need explaining.
OK, let's move on. Kevin Rudd says... Well, we saw him yesterday. He was quite bemused at being asked about number counting and so on. He says, everyone go and take a long, cold shower. Penny Wong, though, joining the list of ministers, saying that he needs to be utilised. How's that going to happen, though? It just seems a bit toxic to be able to utilise him without some sort of peace treaty or something.
Peace treaty. OK, well, you've got a foreign affairs background. We might enlist you on that. What do you reckon?
Well, if it's going to be a Treaty of Versailles, I think, it's going to end up in a second war. But, I mean, I think...
Hang on, I've got to ask the question first. You wait.
Okay. Well, you know more about Kevin Rudd, that's for sure, as well.
Well, yeah.
Key backers, Ed.
Look, I've been a mate of Kevin's for years. And Kevin,
a voter for him, too.
And Kevin, was one of the reasons why I was able to get into Parliament through his backing. And I've always been very grateful for that, and I'll certainly have him out in my electorate, because he always gets a warm response. We always give him a warm welcome, and I think individual MPs will find, and particularly a lot of different communities, particularly those in our region, people drawn from our region, really like to engage with Kevin. And I agree with what Anthony Albanese and Simon Crean and Penny Wong have said. I mean, he's an asset to the party, and he should be used.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. The same thing happened on the Liberal side, didn't it, with
Not at all.
Mr Turnbull?
Not at all. Look, Kieran, this is farcical.
Mr. Turnbull wasn't brought in the tent and that relationship managed?
Yeah, Mr. Turnbull has been a senior minister, shadow minister in Tony's team, doing a fantastic job, and is a team player. Kevin Rudd is out there briefing against the Prime Minister, and as the Prime Minister told her own caucus, her members are briefing. But let's just not forget what senior ministers said about Kevin Rudd's time as Prime Minister. I mean, Simon Crean said he was disloyal. Nicola Roxon said his government was dysfunctional. Wayne Swan, the Treasurer, said he had no Labor values. They're all on record. They're all on record.
Well,
so now for you guys,
if the brief's already started.
No, but no, you
got the lines already.
No, but you guys must be thinking, well, if Kevin Rudd comes back into the tent, it's just a prelude to another challenge. And the fact is, he's probably got 45 votes. He needs 51, 52, and I think it's only a matter of time, Kieran, before we have another challenge, and hopefully an election before September the 14th.
I think Kevin's great in electorates, and that's why they've got their lines out already. You know, I think it's been very good to see him out and about.
So there's nothing to see here, as Mr. Rudd said yesterday.
That's very good. I agree with you.
It's just like Julia Gillard said, you know, she'd be more chance of being a full forward for the Western Bulldogs than for challenging Kevin Rudd. Yeah, believe everything that Kevin says right now.
Victorians always have to go for the AFL analogy.
Let's move on. We've covered that, I think, sufficiently this morning. On to this question yesterday, I want to get your thoughts on this, because it's ended up being a fiery end to question time yesterday when Julie Bishop asked the incoming Attorney General about Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Now, Mr. Dreyfus is a Jewish man and a high-profile member of the Jewish community in Australia. So are you. What did you make of the question? Was it appropriate?
Absolutely a legitimate question, because Mark Dreyfus is Attorney General, regardless of his religion, his race or his colour or his ethnicity.
Nicola Roxon.
Exactly.
Well, no, it would have been, because I think it's a legitimate question. Here is Bob Carr on an aggressive campaign to distance Australia from Israel, to break decades of bipartisan support. And he is doing that, I think, without the support of his Prime Minister. We know that because he rolled her on the Palestine vote, but also without the support of the Cabinet. So Nicola Roxon, no doubt, would probably have the same view as Mark Dreyfus, which is that Bob Carr went too far in calling all those settlements illegal. And in fact, as the Attorney General, he has a major international law division. He would have been consulted by DFAT, it would have been in the brief, and he should answer that question in Parliament. And I think the Speaker did something very unusual yesterday in ruling that question out of order.
Because it was also a question about international law, and as Attorney General, if anyone's going to be asked about that, it'd be the Attorney General.
Yeah, you need some pretty strong forearms to pull that long, long bow that they're putting forward. I mean, look, you know, there have been members of the opposition who've demonstrated a lack of class previously. Why should we be surprised that this has been the way that they've managed yesterday's question? No, oh, really? Oh, I love it. After an issue where they've gone to the Attorney General instead of the Trade Minister who represents the Foreign Minister in the lower house, and you're saying we're playing the ball.
The point is that the point is that the Foreign Minister has done this without the support of the Cabinet and without the support of the Prime Minister.
But you're saying that it's a long bow, but this is something that the Liberal Party has been very strong on from the outset, that the government was wrong in its position on the UN vote and in its position with Bob Carr articulating his ongoing criticisms of the settlements.
And where a lot of nations either voted in favour or voted to abstain on this vote, and only a handful of nations actually voted against the issue in terms of Palestine state observer status. And the other thing is too, you know, there's the bigger question about how this issue of settlements is going to affect the ability to find peace in the Middle East, and that is a critical issue.
Let's move on. There is another issue related to Israelis. Bulgaria has issued an arrest warrant for an Australian man with links to Hezbollah. He's accused of being an accomplice in a bomb blast in, I think it was July of last year. What's your response to this?
Look, this is a very serious development, and I would expect that the Australian authorities, Bob Carr and maybe even the Attorney General and others who involved our intelligence agencies, would talk a bit more to the public about what actually has happened here, because clearly the use of an Australian citizen or an Australian passport, in this case in a terrorist attack that killed innocent civilians on a bus, is something that needs to be looked at. We have an embassy in Iran. This government, namely the Gillard government, has sent delegations to Iran to participate in international conferences. We need to tell Iran, because Hezbollah is a proxy for Iran, this is completely unacceptable. We need to be putting pressure on our European friends to have Hezbollah ruled as a terrorist organisation, because they've been involved here and implicated by the Bulgarian authorities in killing innocent civilians.
Well, the thing about your comment about being up, having that conversation, I mean, as you would be well aware, where there's an active pursuit taking place, you have to be careful of what time information is released, and that's a point that Brendan O'Connor has been making this morning as Immigration Minister as well. So we've got to be able to have those details.
Absolutely. The balance has to be. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. The balance has to be reached. But at the end of the day, this is a very serious development.
Yeah, I think so.
Indeed, it is. And Josh Frydenberg, Ed Husic, we've covered quite a bit of ground this morning.
Thank you.
As always, appreciate your time,
Thanks.
contributions.
You're not just saying that; you mean that, right?
No, it's lovely to see you.
See you, Robin.
That's all for AM Agenda with the dynamic duo this morning. Thank you for your company. The news is next.